Years ago, Isaac Manor built a life many envied. He had a loving family, a successful career as a talented software engineer, and a cherished home. His work on self-learning robots and high-security systems brought him recognition and a sense of purpose. But behind this seemingly perfect life, cracks began to form. Unbeknownst to Isaac, forces were conspiring against him, and everything he had built would soon be destroyed. The downfall began when Isaac discovered a deep betrayal. His wife Lydia had become involved with a corrupt sheriff, Peter Ramsday. This affair led to Isaac's wrongful imprisonment for crimes he didn't commit. During his years behind bars, Isaac reflected on his lost life, abandoned by his family and the injustice he suffered. He vowed to survive and rebuild what was taken from him. Upon release, Isaac stood tense before the prison gates, noticing the familiar faces of his ex-wife, a strange daughter, her grandparents, and his brother. Coldly, he asked the guard for an alternate exit, avoiding the group that no longer felt like family. Surprised, the guard inquired why Isaac didn't want to reunite, but Isaac's response was emotionless. Betrayal had severed those ties, and he wasn't even sure if the restraining order against him still stood. The guard, who had found Isaac cooperative during his time in prison, escorted him through a maze of corridors to a small exit. Meanwhile, Lydia, waiting with her family, noticed the time and asked the guard about Isaac's release. She was shocked to learn he had left through the back door, leaving her in tears as she realized the depth of his anger and the forgotten restraining order. Isaac, now walking briskly to the bus station, reflected on his past 6 years. He once had a happy life with Lydia and their daughter Tommy. As a 40-year-old software engineer, he had built self-learning robots, rewired security systems, and created hidden communication links and backup servers powered by solar panels. His house, nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac near a forest reserve, was a testament to his success from an early breakthrough in software development. Physically, Isaac was average in appearance, 6 feet 8 inches, 190 pounds, with dark blonde hair and light brown eyes. He had a friendly face, a beard he shaved when going out, and enjoyed cycling and walking. Though shy, he could be charming, witty, and a great conversationalist when he opened up. An avid reader, Isaac's ability to recall information helped him excel in his work. 6 years ago, Sheriff Peter Ramsday asked Isaac Manor to update a traffic control program to reduce pollution. When Isaac and his wife Lydia invited Ramsday to dinner to discuss the project, Ramsday immediately became infatuated with Lydia. 6 months later, Ramsday acted on his desire. One day Isaac returned home to celebrate completing the project and found Ramsday with Lydia. Shocked, Isaac demanded an explanation. Ramsday mocked him and left, leaving Lydia to handle the situation. She coldly told Isaac she would continue the affair and threatened to take everything from him, including their daughter, Tommy, if he filed for divorce. Isaac, calm but furious, refused to accept her terms and told her to leave. After making arrangements with his lawyer, Ben Green, to start the divorce process and protect his finances, Isaac returned home later to an empty house, filled with sadness and grief. The next morning Isaac met with Ben, who warned him that Ramsday, known for corruption, posed a serious threat. They quickly devised a plan to protect Isaac financially. However, before Ben could leave, police stormed in and arrested Isaac on false charges of misuse filed by Lydia and Tommy. Despite Isaac's protests, Ben advised him to stay silent and promised to handle the situation. Ben then raced to the police station, but the officers kept giving him the runaround, moving Isaac between locations. Realizing Ramsday's involvement, Ben contacted a judge, who intervened, ensuring that Ben would have immediate and unharmed access to Isaac without further delay. The judge also demanded the officers' names and badge numbers, putting them on notice. Both men were sweating heavily despite the air conditioning. After the phone call, the supervisor offered to take Ben to 2nd Street, where he found Isaac in a cell. Ben started recording and asked, "Have they interrogated you?" Isaac replied, "They tried, and they threatened me with a baton if I didn't confess to hurting Lydia and Tommy. I told them I wouldn't talk without my lawyer." "How did they treat you?" "They ignored me, no water, No bathroom break until suddenly they let me use the restroom and gave me a terrible cup of tea. I fear something worse is coming. Ben sighed. I'm afraid so, it seems too planned. Have you been moved? No, I've been here since my arrest. Ben decided, I'm handing your case to a colleague who specializes in this. I'll focus on your divorce. Is that okay? Isaac agreed, reminding Ben to use his power of attorney. 6 months later in court, Isaac had no chance. Lydia, Tommy, and 2 women he didn't know testified against him, claiming he was violent. Isaac couldn't provide an alibi due to sabotaged hard drives, and he chose not to reveal his backup system. The prosecutor painted him as a terrible husband and father. Lydia and Tommy looked unhealthy, but Isaac stayed stoic as the jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to 5.5 years, though Isaac expected to serve the full term due to Ramsday's influence. During sentencing, Isaac noticed Lydia pale, Tommy crying, and Ramsday smirking like a Cheshire cat. Back in his cell, a woman handed Isaac an envelope with divorce papers and adoption documents for Tommy, who would be adopted by Ramsday. Isaac signed them despite the pain. Lydia demanded the house, half their savings, $5,000 monthly for 5 years, and a trust fund for Tommy's education. Ben reviewed the demands with Isaac, who then instructed Ben to counteroffer. Isaac wanted to keep the house, which was his before marriage, and offered a lump sum of $1 million, $300,000 for support, and $700,000 from savings, if they agreed to drop the other demands. Before leaving, Ben asked if Lydia knew about Isaac's investment fund. Isaac replied that he mentioned it, but never disclosed its size. He also reminded Ben to collect $175,000 from the city for the traffic light software upgrade, which would be Ben's fee. Ben left feeling both sad and happy, sad that Isaac faced 5 more years in prison for something he didn't do, but happy because he could now afford the house he and his fiancée wanted, thanks to the city's payment he would pursue. The next day, Isaac arrived at his new prison cell after the warden's speech. Inside, he encountered K2, the biggest bully in the prison who was focused on writing something. Isaac politely cleared his throat, and K2 warned him, "If you tell anyone I can't write well, you'll regret it." Surprised, Isaac asked, "No one ever taught you?" K2, surprised by the question, explained that he had been working since he was 8 years old. He was trying to write a letter to his grandmother for her 87th birthday. Isaac offered to help, suggesting K2 dictate the letter, and K2 agreed to let Isaac rewrite it after he finished. This broke the ice between them. Isaac then asked if K2 wanted to learn to read and write, offering to teach him. K2, moved to tears, agreed but made Isaac promise not to tell anyone. Isaac assured him that anyone trying deserves help, and they became friends. 2 weeks later, Isaac unexpectedly received a visitor, his soon-to-be ex-wife Lydia and their daughter. Annoyed, Isaac refused to speak with them and asked the guard to prevent future visits. Lydia called after him, but he ignored her. Later, Ben, Isaac's lawyer, visited with an amended divorce proposal. Lydia was willing to give up half the money if Isaac would talk to her. Isaac refused, saying he'd rather pay $500,000 than speak to her again. Ben then asked if there was anything else he could do, and Isaac requested children's books for his cellmate. Ben was surprised, but agreed to help. When the books arrived, the guards and prisoners were curious. Back in the cell, K2 was upset by their comments, but Isaac reassured him, explaining that reading would help him avoid being tricked, and that books could be enjoyable. K2 agreed to start reading, saying he'd try because Isaac called him a friend. Isaac realized K2 had lived a lonely life and wished he could change that for him. The next day, Isaac returned to his cell bruised and in pain. K2 quickly helped him to his bunk, asking angrily, "What happened?" Isaac explained, "My wife wants my house, and Sheriff Ramsday sent men to knock me as a message to give it up." K2 growled, expressing his resolve to keep his own house no matter what. Isaac described one of his attackers, and the next day, 4 severely injured men were admitted to the prison ward, sending a clear message. Isaac was off limits. Over the following month, K2 became an eager learner and avid reader. He even sent other inmates to Isaac for help, earning Isaac the nickname Doc Isaac. Soon, about 10 inmates were in Isaac's informal class. During a discussion about life after prison, many inmates shared concerns about finding jobs as ex-convicts. This inspired Isaac to ask what kind of businesses they'd want to start. One inmate, a baker, expressed a desire to open a bakery, so Isaac asked him to draft a plan as a math assignment. K2, who wanted to work in security, was appointed by Isaac as his future head of security. During Ben's monthly visit, Isaac shared his idea of creating an investment fund to help ex-convicts start businesses. Ben agreed to handle the legal side while Isaac managed the finances, and they quickly moved forward with the plan. Ben also brought news that Lydia had signed the divorce papers, now only asking for half the savings with no alimony, leaving Isaac surprised but relieved. 6 months later, Isaac finalized the divorce and adjusted to prison life. The investment fund he started with Ben was thriving, helping prisoners find jobs or start businesses. Isaac earned respect in prison, and any troublemakers quickly learned to avoid him. He even got his own room for teaching, as the guards recognized his calming influence on the inmates. One day, a welfare worker asked why Isaac wasn't up for parole. Isaac bluntly explained that the warden, a friend of Ramsday, wrote negative reports on him, and he feared that a Ramsday-connected parole officer could easily send him back to prison. He preferred to serve his full sentence to be truly free. The worker, concerned, apologized for bothering him, but Isaac assured her the prisoners were happy with his presence. He then headed to his self-defense class, a requirement by K2 that had transformed Isaac into a stronger, more formidable person over his 4 years in prison. On his way back from the gym, a guard stopped Isaac. "The warden wants to see you now." Isaac, worried, thought, "What now? Am I in trouble?" Outwardly calm, he asked, "Do I need to clean up first?" "No, go as you are." 5 minutes later, Isaac stood in the warden's office. The warden dismissed the guard and told Isaac he should clean up, but Isaac stayed silent. The warden then asked, "Do you know about computers?" "I was a computer programmer before, sir." "That's not an answer. Do you know anything about computers?" Sensing something suspicious, Isaac replied, "If it's a software issue, I can help. Hardware is less likely." The warden instructed Isaac to find the problem on the office computer and left. Isaac quickly realized it was a trap. There was an internet icon, and he knew using it could add time to his sentence. He found a keylogger and poorly hidden problematic files. Eventually, he identified the issue. A worm from a downloaded video was corrupting files. But Isaac kept this information to himself. When the warden returned, Isaac requested privacy to explain. Once alone, Isaac revealed the situation. The computer was filled with images and videos, and the worm was causing damage. He warned that trying to blame him wouldn't work since internet access was monitored. Isaac offered to fix it, but only if granted internet privileges and legal protection. The warden, realizing his trap had failed, reluctantly agreed to Isaac's terms after confirming his lawyer's details. A week later, late at night, Isaac worked on the warden's computer. He disabled the keylogger, compressed and hid the files, and installed the necessary software. While doing so, Isaac accessed his home security system, shocked to find Sheriff Ramsday destroying his house and directing men to move something quickly. Inspired, Isaac devised a plan. He set up a program to stream and download live footage from his home security system, then erased all traces of his actions. He replaced the keylogger with a less detectable version and left a small issue that would resurface in a year. As Isaac finished his work, a supervisor burst in, asking impatiently, "Are you done?" "Yes, sir. All finished. If any issues arise, feel free to call." The supervisor replied sternly, "I will, and I won't be lenient. A guard will escort you back." Dismissed. Isaac thanked him and left. Back in his cell, K2 noticed Isaac's satisfied expression and asked, "What are you up to?" Isaac responded with a grin, "Revenge. Fabian." "Now, who do we need to contact?" "A letter to Ben Green," K2 replied. "Do you have a pen and paper?" A week later, an FBI agent, confused by the letter Ben delivered, consulted her IT team. After connecting to Isaac's home security system, they were shocked by the state of his house. The letter detailed late-night activity and Ramsday's involvement. Soon after, Ramsday, shackled and escorted by guards, spotted Isaac and threatened him. Isaac laughed, enraging Ramsday, who spewed threats. K2 noticed Isaac's reaction and glared at Ramsday with hatred. Later, Isaac met with an FBI agent who thanked him for helping them catch Ramsday and hinted at a reward for reporting the sheriff's tax fraud. Isaac, pleased, dodged questions about how he accessed his security system, still harboring thoughts of revenge against the warden. That night, Ramsday awoke in his cell, tied down. A menacing voice warned him against threatening Isaac, promising retaliation if anything happened to Isaac or his family. Ramsday, terrified, nodded in agreement. Shortly after, Isaac was quietly escorted out of prison. He took a bus and eventually arrived at a parking garage, where he was warmly greeted. He needed a vehicle, and the man, who was grateful for Isaac's help in the past, offered him a Nissan truck at a discount, refusing to accept full payment. Isaac smiled and agreed, saying, "We'll figure something out." After a cup of tea, Isaac waited for the paperwork to be processed, then familiarized himself with the truck before heading to visit his close friend. Later that afternoon, he settled into a chair at Ben's home and sighed, telling Anna, "It's been a long time since I've sat in a chair like this." Anna, fond of Isaac and knowing his innocence, noticed how much he had changed. His face was worn, his eyes filled with sadness, and his beard obscured his expressions, yet he remained a gentleman. Isaac brought Anna flowers, remembering her wedding day, though he couldn't attend. She mentioned Ben would be home soon with Isaac's favorite Indonesian food. When Ben arrived, he joked about the truck in the driveway, and the two men embraced. Ben welcomed Isaac back, his voice thick with emotion. Anna reassured Isaac, "Take your time, we understand." Isaac shook off his gloom and said, "Sweet home." When Ben asked what he wanted to drink, Isaac opted for sparkling water, saying he hadn't had booze in 5.5 years, and planned to keep it that way. As Anna served dinner, she paused and declared, "Tonight we celebrate. Tomorrow, you can face your battles again. Deal?" Both men agreed, and they enjoyed a relaxed evening. Ben told Isaac they had prepared the guest room, but Isaac hesitated, offering to stay at a hotel. Anna firmly insisted he stay with them, also offering to accompany him to his house the next day. Isaac finally agreed, thanking them, but admitted he was exhausted. Anna reminded him, "We're your friends, remember, you helped pay for this house with the traffic light project. Now get some rest, we love you too." Despite the comfort, Isaac struggled to sleep. The bed was too soft and the quiet was unsettling compared to the prison noise. Eventually, he drifted into a restless sleep. The next day, Laura Wenstad watched as two cars pulled up at the house on her street. A man and woman, clearly in love, and a thin, bearded man, got out of a blue truck. She recognized pain in his eyes as she observed them with binoculars left behind by the FBI. The group entered the house after the bearded man retrieved a crowbar from his truck. Isaac walked through the ruins of his former home, now just another damaged building. The furniture was destroyed, the kitchen filthy, and the whole house reeked worse than prison. Electrical wires were cut, the ceiling torn down, and all valuables stolen. Isaac wondered if he could ever call this place home again. He returned to his truck, grabbed his camping supplies, and began setting up inside the wrecked house, preparing for the night. When Laura returned with her 10-year-old son Timothy, she saw Anna talking to Isaac. At that moment, Isaac finally lost his composure. After surveying the damage to his home, the reality of his situation overwhelmed him. The remnants of his past life were a shell, ruined by neglect and bad memories. He set up his bed and kitchen gear in the cleanest room he could find, but when Anna gently asked, "Isaac, are you sure staying here is a good idea? You seem very anxious. Please come back with us," it broke him. Isaac collapsed into a chair and started sobbing, his body shaking with grief and frustration. Ben quickly embraced him, whispering, "It's okay, Isaac. We're here for you. Let it all out." It took a while for Isaac to regain his composure. He eventually hugged his friends and thanked them, saying, "I wouldn't have made it without you. The way they trashed the house was just too much." Anna, still concerned, urged, "Are you sure you want to stay here? Please come with us." Isaac reassured her with a sly smile, saying he needed to handle business and would be fine. He asked for their phone numbers, then went back inside as they left. As they reached their car, Laura approached them. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I'm worried about my safety and my son's. Is your friend okay?" Anna assured her, "Your neighborhood just got better. Isaac's not dangerous. He's one of the gentlest people I know. You'll have a great neighbor." Back inside, Isaac inspected the house and found that, although the fuses were removed, the wires in the fuse box weren't cut, and the hidden solar-powered backup security system seemed intact. Relieved, he decided to add a computer or laptop to his shopping list. That afternoon, Isaac bought a phone, tablet, laptop, flash drives, and a small generator. He returned home with supplies and dinner, then called Ben to share his new contact details and request a list of XCOM companies. The next morning, Laura saw Isaac sitting outside, working on his laptop and talking on the phone. Curious, she did some research and learned he had spent 5.5 years in prison for attacking his wife and daughter. Despite the seriousness of the charges, the couple she met had called him harmless. Laura decided to remain cautious. Later, a van from XCOM Services arrived at Isaac's house with the slogan, "We've had a hard time learning to be honest, but now we do honest work at an honest price." Laura saved the number from the van to check online later. After dropping Tim off at school, she noticed 2 men from the van greeting Isaac with smiles and handshakes. They all went inside the house with a thermos and a large bag. Isaac, aware that Laura had been watching him the previous day, thought, "Word will spread soon. Maybe it's best to hold off on introductions." He then gave instructions to the men. "Let's clean up. Start with the kitchen, bedroom, and office. If you're unsure about anything, just ask." Later that day, a truck delivered a 40-yard dumpster. Laura saw a minivan with the XCOM Services logo pull up, and a woman gave directions before bringing a bouquet of flowers to Laura's door. The woman handed over the flowers, saying, "Regards from Dr. Isaac. If we're too loud, just let us know." Laura, surprised, waved back at Isaac, who was sitting by his door and felt unexpectedly uplifted. 2 weeks and 2 dumpsters later, the house was cleared and renovation plans were in place. Although only the bedroom and part of the kitchen were usable, Isaac was making progress. Sitting outside under a shelter during a rainstorm, he heard a car engine stall and saw Laura in distress. He grabbed his umbrella and approached her. "Good afternoon. I'm Isaac Manor, your neighbor." He introduced himself with a smile. Laura, in a rush to pick up her son, Tim, replied, "My car won't start, and I'm late." Isaac offered his trucker a ride, joking about being an ex-con. After some hesitation, Laura agreed to let him drive. As they prepared to leave, Laura mentioned she couldn't afford repairs, and Isaac interrupted, saying, "I offered help, no strings attached, just a friendly gesture." Feeling embarrassed, Laura introduced herself properly and accepted Isaac's offer. Isaac called his team to arrange for her car to be fixed while they picked up Tim from school. Laura, surprised by the quick response, realized Isaac's connection to the garage through his business, helping former inmates restart their lives. At school, Tim was excited to see the truck, and Isaac introduced himself, offering Tim the option to call him by his first name. They headed home, with Isaac proving to be a helpful and supportive neighbor. Back at the house, Joey pulled Isaac aside. "Doc, this car is a trap. The motor's wrecked, and everything else is worse. What should we do?" Isaac remembered Laura's situation and asked, "Do you have something in stock? I've got a Nissan Rogue, but it's not a pretty color. Should I ask her?" "No, just swap it out and send me the bill. I can't have a dead neighbor on my conscience." Joey approached Laura and asked for her car keys and ID. She looked distraught and said, "I can't afford the repairs." Joey reassured her, "Don't worry, Doc's taking care of it. I'll bring a replacement tonight." Surprised, Laura asked, "Isaac did that? Is he always like this?" "Yes, he's one of the kindest people I know. He never asks for anything in return." That's why we all help him. And for the record, I don't believe he did what they say he did to his ex. Meanwhile, Isaac gathered the courage to review his backup hard drives. He watched footage of his wife and Sheriff Ramsday plotting to frame him. The recordings showed how they faked injuries and manipulated the police. Isaac, devastated, finally stopped when he heard Ramsday ordering his silence, suggesting a deadly fate for him. Isaac immediately contacted the FBI and handed over the evidence, requesting certified copies to prove his innocence. At the prosecutor's office, Lydia was called in. Agent Smith from the FBI informed her that they were reopening Isaac's case. Lydia turned pale as the agent played footage of her and Ramsday conspiring against Isaac. Lydia fainted and woke up to see the prosecutor being arrested. Agent Smith coldly told him, "You won't get away with this. We have months of footage proving your conspiracy, and it's all legal because the homeowner gave it to us." A week later, Lydia confessed and Ramsday was formally charged with crimes that would keep him in prison for life. Lydia was sentenced for making false statements and perjury. Isaac made it clear he wouldn't pursue further action against her to avoid leaving his ex-daughter without family. However, he did ask Ben to scare her, leading to a $100,000 lawsuit for each year Isaac spent in prison. Ramsday faced a much harsher penalty, with a lawsuit demanding $1 million for each year Isaac was jailed and damages to his home. The city of Denz also faced a lawsuit for their role in his wrongful imprisonment, quickly agreeing to a settlement. Ramsday, arrogant, didn't take the lawsuit seriously, and his lawyer did minimal work. Eventually, the court ruled in Isaac's favor, stripping Ramsday of his fortune. Lydia, terrified by Isaac's lawsuit, found herself in jail without a job, facing foreclosure and owing $550,000. In prison, she was isolated, ignored by inmates, and left alone in her cell. Lydia learned about the investment program Isaac and Ben started, realizing that without her actions, it wouldn't have existed. Ramsday, furious upon learning he was sued for $5.5 million plus $500,000 in repairs, threatened Isaac and his family. Soon after, he was visited by less-than-friendly individuals, resulting in him screaming in pain. A year after his release, Isaac had fully renovated his home and discreetly bought every house in his cul-de-sac. One stormy night, he found Laura and Tim soaked and shivering in his doorway. Angry but concerned, he gave them raincoats and brought them inside. Laura apologized for panicking, explaining the fuse box blew. Isaac calmed her down, promising to have it fixed the next day and insisting they stay the night. He prepared a room for them, found t-shirts, and sent them to shower. As he prepared to sleep in his study, Laura thanked him, asking why his ex had left him. Isaac explained how he had hidden security systems that eventually exposed Ramsday and proved his innocence. He then sent Laura to bed, knowing tomorrow would be a busy day. The next morning, a contractor inspected Laura's house. K2 accompanied him, and Isaac introduced him to Laura. Her hand disappeared in his large one during the handshake, and Timothy joined in too. K2 jokingly warned Timothy, "Careful, you're stronger than you think," breaking the ice. They all went for coffee, where K2 whispered to Laura, "Don't drink Isaac's coffee without water." Laura giggled, agreeing that it was strong. The contractor returned with bad news. Laura's house was nearly uninhabitable due to neglect. Laura began to cry, but Isaac took charge. He instructed K2 to install a lock on his bedroom door and give Laura the keys. When Laura mentioned her ex was the landlord and wouldn't sell the house, Isaac told K2 to handle it and have the property forensically examined before making an offer. When Isaac asked about her work, Laura explained she was stuck in a low-paying job, unable to find better opportunities due to her ex Isaac, realizing he needed a secretary, offered her a job managing his workload. He even suggested setting up a space for Timothy so she could work from his house or hers once it was renovated. Touched by the offer, Laura hesitated, worried about references and caring for her son. Isaac reassured her, offering to help with Timothy's homework and emphasizing that working together would benefit both of them. Laura, moved by his kindness, accepted the job and embraced Isaac. Timothy soon found an old robot Isaac had built as a hobby. Excited, Isaac helped him set it up, and soon the robot was rolling around the driveway, accompanied by Timothy's laughter. Later, Laura quit her old job where they tried to entice her with a raise. Isaac, unfazed, offered her $4,000 a month, free rent, and his gratitude. Laura happily accepted. 2 weeks later, Laura was impressed by how quickly the ex-con crews renovated her house, which was now rent-free thanks to Fabian's negotiations. Although she was moving her things back in, she felt a growing attachment to Isaac. Their daily routine included an hour of cardio and fitness, a habit Isaac picked up in prison. Initially, Laura struggled with the workouts, but she soon noticed improvements in her fitness and found the work both challenging and rewarding. A few nights later, Tim excitedly mentioned he had a new math teacher, but Laura, preoccupied with thoughts of Isaac and how to express her feelings for him, only half listened. She noticed an unfamiliar car in her driveway, but didn't think much of it. Later, she realized the car was still there with the driver inside, so she approached and knocked on the window. Inside the car was Thomasina Tommy Manor, who had recently started teaching math at Tim's school. When her mother went to prison for perjury, Tommy had to quit studying artificial intelligence and get a job. Hearing Tim talk about building a robot with Isaac sparked jealousy in her. She tracked down Tim's address and, seeing her father after 6 years, was overcome with emotion. Lost in her thoughts, Tommy didn't notice Laura until she knocked on the window. Laura, concerned, invited her inside where she met Tim, who recognized her as Miss Tommy. Laura introduced herself, and Tommy revealed that she was Isaac's daughter, though she hadn't seen him in years. Laura, realizing the connection, invited her to stay the night, insisting she wasn't in a state to drive. Tommy shared more of her story with Laura, explaining that she had refused to be adopted by Peter Ramsday and had cut ties with her mother after learning what they did to her father. Laura, surprised by this information, suggested they find a way to reconnect Tommy with Isaac. She mentioned that Isaac still kept a picture of Tommy in his desk, which touched Tommy deeply. Tommy then observed Laura's feelings for Isaac and gently asked if she loved him. Laura admitted her feelings but expressed doubts about her chances with him. Tommy reassured her, sharing insights from her mother. Isaac was shy and distant when he cared about someone, not wanting to impose. Tommy encouraged Laura, saying Isaac's small gestures, flowers, thoughtful gifts, were signs of his affection. Tommy concluded by asking Laura to take care of Isaac, expressing her deep desire for her father's happiness, even though she couldn't fulfill his demand to give him back the 5 years he lost. Tommy's tears were on the verge of spilling over, and Laura was having a rough night after an emotional evening. A stranger had stayed in her home and explained how the man she loved, Isaac, was wired. Now that she understood him a bit more, she tried to figure out how to break through his defenses. She considered different plans but quickly discarded them, eventually deciding to dress more provocatively. Reuniting father and daughter would have to wait. When Laura joined Isaac in his small gym, he was pleasantly surprised. She was wearing her usual sweatpants, but her loose t-shirt had been replaced by a tight top showing off her figure. Noticing her progress, he saw she had started to tone up and lose weight. Halfway through their workout, Laura decided to test Tommy's advice. She asked Isaac, "Can I have the day off? I need to relax and buy some new clothes." Isaac, enthusiastic, offered to join her, which was exactly what Laura wanted to hear. She pretended to hesitate but quickly agreed, saying she'd appreciate the company and his help choosing clothes. Isaac, concerned, gave her an out, but she reassured him, calling him both a friend and her boss. They agreed not to talk about work, and Isaac jokingly called her boss. Later, after dropping Tim off at school, they headed to the mall. They spent the morning shopping, with Laura encouraging Isaac to update his wardrobe to shed his convict image. She enjoyed the day, gaining confidence as she updated her own look. She admired a dress, but put it back due to cost, unaware that Isaac had already arranged for it to be purchased. After lunch, they playfully argued over the bill, and Isaac won. Laura didn't notice the extra bag containing the dress and her favorite perfume until she unpacked it home, realizing she truly had a chance with Isaac. The next day, she wore another flattering top to the gym. By the third day, frustrated and desperate, she ended her workout in tears. Isaac immediately noticed and asked what was wrong. Laura decided to be direct, saying, "I have a problem with a man. I love him, but he's not responding to my advances." Isaac, visibly affected, stammered some advice, telling her to be direct, and that any man would be foolish to ignore her. After a pause, Laura bluntly asked, "Isaac, are you going to make love to me here or in your bed?" Isaac, shocked, stammered, "You mean me?" When Laura confirmed, Isaac realized he felt the same. He confessed his love, admitting he'd been holding back because he was her employer. Laura reminded him he was sometimes too decent for his own good, and they quickly decided to head to the bedroom. Later, lying together after a nap, Laura reminded Isaac it was time to pick up Tim. Isaac showered and left to get Tim from school, where Laura met Tommy, who smirked and said, "Looks like you got your man." Laura laughed and thanked her, saying, "You were so right." 6 weeks later, Laura's opportunity arrived. During their morning workout, Isaac noticed Laura seemed unusually tired. She declined coffee and opted for tea, and when someone passed by with a cheddar sandwich, she rushed to the bathroom. Isaac realized something was off. After Laura returned, he told her he'd take the day off, using a client visit as an excuse. As soon as Laura went inside, Isaac drove to a mall with a good jeweler. The next morning, feeling slightly better, Laura skipped her workout, blaming a virus. When she arrived at her office, she found 2 small numbered boxes on her desk. In the first, she discovered an antique pocket watch with a note. "Time flies by and life is too short to waste. The employer wonders if his PA will let him propose." Laura's heart warmed. In the second box, she found 3 pregnancy tests, confirming Isaac had noticed before she did. Overwhelmed with emotions, she stood in silence until a quiet cough made her turn. Isaac was in the doorway and she blushed deeply. She replied modestly, "Yes, my employer is allowed to propose." Isaac took her hand, led her outside, and asked her loudly, "Laura Wenstad, will you marry me?" "Yes, you idiot," she replied playfully, realizing they had an audience. As Isaac slipped the engagement ring on her finger, cheers erupted around them. Tim brought champagne and Isaac announced, "I bet on yes." After the celebration, Isaac and Laura returned to his house. Exhausted from the day's emotions, they sat quietly, enjoying each other's company. Isaac then asked, "Where do you want to live? Here in this old house, or should we build a new one? And what about your old house?" Laura replied, "I love this house, and if I can help with the renovations, I'd like to stay here. As for my old house, it's yours now, you can decide what to do with it, but if you want to sell it, I'll buy it from you." Isaac smiled, and Laura thought about the possibilities. She calmly said, "I'll think about it, maybe I know someone." The next day, after picking up Tim, Isaac and Laura discussed house renovations. Isaac wanted to add a pool and a balcony off the bedroom and build a cabin for Tim connected to the main house. Later, Laura brought up a candidate for her old house. Nervous, she asked Isaac to listen carefully before responding. She explained that Tim's new math teacher, Thomasina Manor, needed a place to live since her current home was in foreclosure. Isaac was stunned, realizing Thomasina was his daughter, not Ramsday's. Almost exploding, he managed to mutter, "What?" Laura gently reminded him, "You promised to listen." Laura gently took Isaac's hands and began explaining in a soft voice. "Tommy didn't know what they were doing to you. She thought the makeup artist was just working on her portfolio. Ramsday falsified her testimony. Whenever she tried to see you or get you released, Ramsday blocked her. Even the judge was on Ramsday's payroll. Before you were sentenced, even your ex-wife thought it was just to pressure you into submission." As Laura spoke, Isaac's face showed a range of emotions: red, purple, white, and finally ashen. Tears streamed down his cheeks and he whispered, "Poor thing. What do we do now?" His mind was overwhelmed, thinking of the nearly 7 years lost. Laura kissed him gently, bringing him back from his despair. Isaac snapped out of it, vowing, "Ramsday will pay for this and it's going to be a big price. Please don't do anything foolish. I don't want you back in jail, especially since I'm pregnant." All 3 tests were positive, Laura added with a smile. We need to think about Tommy now. Isaac agreed to leave Tommy's situation to Laura. He arranged for the contractor to drive him home while Laura went to pick up Tim and Tommy. At the school, Laura invited Tommy into the car, telling her she had found her a house. Tommy, puzzled, agreed to go see it, and they drove to Laura's home. When they arrived, Laura revealed that Tommy's new house was actually hers as she was moving in with Isaac. Tommy was shocked, but relieved to find out she could afford it and wouldn't have to do anything inappropriate for it. Laura then revealed that Isaac was her father and that they were getting married because a new sibling was on the way. Tommy experienced a flood of emotions, happiness, surprise, and nerves about seeing her father again after nearly 7 years. Laura led Tommy to Isaac's house, where Tim ran ahead and loudly knocked on the door. Isaac opened it, nervous but happy, and greeted both women warmly. When Isaac saw Tommy, he whispered, "Tommy, you've grown into such a beautiful woman. Can I give you a hug?" Tommy rushed into his arms, crying out, "Daddy." They embraced for a long time until Laura called them inside. Once inside, Tommy carefully studied her father. He had aged more than she expected. His face was lined with wrinkles and he appeared leaner and more hardened than before. Laura gently interrupted, suggesting they continue their reunion in private while she prepared dinner. Tommy, overjoyed, hugged Laura and called her mom, expressing her gratitude. Isaac and Tommy settled in the living room where Isaac offered her a soft drink, explaining that he had given up booze after his time in prison. Tommy nodded, and still processing everything, asked, "Are you really offering me Laura's house? I can think of a few complications." Isaac chuckled softly and said, "I've thought about that. The only issue might be the restraining order your mother has against me. I understand she'll need a place to stay after she gets out of jail, and your house has plenty of room. But, listen carefully, Tommy. This is your home because you're Laura's tenant, and I won't interfere with your guests. However, your mother must keep her distance from me. No coming near my garden or front door. I'll ignore her if I see her on the street, but she's not welcome near me. Can you live with that?" Tommy nodded. "Yes, Dad. It's just temporary, until she's back on her feet. Honestly, I don't want her living with me long-term either." Isaac raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Tommy continued, "I have a serious boyfriend and I need my space. Plus, we haven't gotten along since she got involved with that idiot. I hope she finds a job in her own place soon." Isaac considered that and replied, "Is she still working as an accountant? Maybe I can help her find a job. She should have some money left. I paid nearly $500,000 to settle things with her." Tommy shook her head. "No, Dad, that guy drained her dry and now he's broke after paying all the compensation. But yes, she's still a CPA and has also picked up some paralegal work. I'll see if I can help her find something, but let's keep that between us." Isaac asked, "Do you visit her in prison?" Tommy nodded just as Laura announced that dinner was ready. A few weeks later, Isaac and Tommy were chatting in the living room when Isaac asked, "When was the last time you visited your mother?" "Right before I moved here," Tommy replied. "Remember, she's still your mother. Keep in touch with her. You might regret it if you don't." Before Tommy could respond, there was a loud knock. Isaac said, "That's Fabian, he's the only one who knocks like that," and went to the door. Fabian introduced his son Julian, proudly mentioning that despite his father being in prison, Julian had become a teacher. Julian, nervous, asked to speak with Isaac in private. Once alone, Julian confessed, "Sir, I want to ask Thomasina to marry me. We've been together for a long time and I'm asking for your blessing." Isaac smiled and called out, "Thomasina Manor, I know you're listening. Come in here." Tommy entered smiling. Isaac asked, "Should I give this nice young man my blessing?" "Yes, please, Papa," she replied. Isaac shook Julian's hand, saying, "You have my blessing, son. Take good care of my daughter. Now let's celebrate." As they headed to the living room, Tommy pulled Isaac aside and whispered, "Dad, you're going to be a grandfather in about 7 months. The doctor confirmed it this morning." Isaac beamed with joy. "Tommy, you've made me so happy. How about a double wedding with Laura and me?" Tommy agreed and they joined the others. In the living room, Julian introduced Tommy as his future wife to Fabian, who was stunned but gave his blessing. Tommy then revealed to Julian, "You're going to be a dad. We decided to start a family while we're still young. 2 weeks later, during a visit, Lydia complimented Tommy on how well she looked. Tommy shared that she had a place to live, was getting married, and life was treating her well. Lydia was surprised to learn that Tommy's new home was next to Isaac's and that they had reunited. She timidly asked when the wedding was. "We're waiting for you to get out of jail," Tommy replied. "Since you're still my mother, you're invited." Hopeful, Lydia asked, "Can I stay with you when I'm released? I have nowhere to go and I need a job too." Tommy took a deep breath, not wanting Lydia to know that her father had already arranged a job for her. She simply said, "You can stay with me until the baby comes, but then I'll need the space." "For work? Have you tried XCOM services? They help former convicts find jobs?" Lydia, surprised, replied, "You're having a baby? Why didn't you tell me? Feels like you're still mad at me. Can't you forgive me?" Tommy, caught off guard by her mother's obliviousness, let her frustration show. "Mom, the only reason I keep in touch is because Dad tells me I only have one mom. Otherwise you wouldn't have heard from me since you were last in jail. You cost me over 6 years with Dad because you were too selfish and cowardly to do the right thing. And how could you fall for that idiot when you had my dad?" Lydia was stunned by Tommy's anger. It hit her hard, realizing she had a lot of issues to resolve with her daughter. The fact that Isaac had moved on with a girlfriend shocked her too. She hadn't expected him to rebuild his life so quickly, especially in the house where he'd faced so much misery. As Tommy left, Lydia was left alone with her thoughts, haunted by her daughter's harsh words. Lydia had left Peter soon after realizing she'd been manipulated, and the money was gone. She had tried to be a good mother to Tommy, thinking her daughter's hostility was just teenage rebellion. Now, she understood how much she had hurt Tommy, who was clearly closer to her father than she had realized. Lydia was also upset that Tommy hadn't told her about the pregnancy, further deepening the distance between them. She knew there was a long road ahead before she could rebuild their relationship. When Lydia moved into Tommy's house, it was clear the welcome was lukewarm. Tommy didn't hug her but introduced her to Julian, her fiancé, and said, "You can use everything here while you look for work. There's a laptop in your room. Have you contacted XCOM yet?" Lydia looked down and admitted, "I tried, but they didn't seem interested. Felt like I was blacklisted." Julian responded, "I'll ask Dad about it. He has a say in SCOM's hiring and made sure you'd be treated respectfully. Otherwise, it would have been tough for you. Isaac is well respected." Lydia, confused, asked, "What does your father have to do with my ex-husband?" Tommy, cutting her off sharply, said, "Don't even think about it, Mom. Dad wants nothing to do with you, understand?" Julian then explained the connection between Isaac and Fabian, which made things clearer for Lydia. She realized how intertwined their lives had become. Later, Lydia was startled by a visitor. Fabian, a massive man, introduced himself. He explained that her past association with Ramsday made her a risk, but Isaac had spoken up on her behalf. Fabian offered her a job as an accountant with his company, with the condition that she never contact Isaac. Lydia, feeling cornered, agreed. As Fabian left, Lydia was left reeling. She was shocked by how completely Isaac had shut her out, even though he still ensured her basic needs were met. She watched through binoculars as Fabian greeted Isaac at his house, feeling a mix of jealousy and regret. When she later saw Isaac with a pregnant woman, she was overwhelmed with envy, realizing this should have been her life. As Tommy's wedding approached, Lydia tried to gather as much information about Isaac as possible, using the binoculars to watch him from afar. She was hurt when she learned Isaac and Laura were also getting married. The news crushed her hopes of ever reuniting with Isaac. At the wedding, Lydia felt out of place. During the reception, she noticed Julian asking Isaac for permission to dance with her. As they danced, Lydia felt a brief moment of happiness. But when Isaac later asked her to dance, she was struck by the sadness in his eyes. She realized how much she had hurt him and felt overwhelmed with guilt. Lydia suddenly understood the depth of the pain she had caused and couldn't comprehend how she had let things get this far. In an instant, all of Lydia's self-esteem crumbled, and she physically shuddered at the realization of what she had done to Isaac. She noticed Isaac extending his hand, patiently waiting, as her thoughts overwhelmed her. In a timid voice, she asked, "Are you asking me?" Isaac repeated, "Will you honor me, Lydia, with this dance?" Without another word, Lydia clung to Isaac and began to sob. As the dance continued, Lydia regained her composure and, with all the courage she could muster, whispered through tears, "Isaac, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I know you must hate me." Isaac responded, "I can't give you back those years, Lydia. I'm glad you feel remorse. But we're dancing because the two women I love most asked me to show you compassion. You felt a fraction of the pain I endured. Ramsday's betrayal scarred me deeply. I hated you until Laura came into my life. Her love healed me, and any feelings for you faded. We're strangers now, connected only by our past. For our daughter and soon-to-be grandchild, I won't avoid you, but it will be a long time before I can consider you a friend. Remember, two people are watching you closely, ready to act if you cross any lines." Lydia felt the sting of Isaac's words, but also longed for the man she had once loved. He was different now, hardened and stronger. She realized the steep price she had paid. Instead of being by her daughter's side on her wedding day, she was merely tolerated as a guest. Isaac's fiancée had taken her place as the mother figure, and Lydia could see how close they had become. Julian had asked her to dance, but only with Isaac's permission, and it was clear her daughter and Isaac's fiancé had to convince him to allow it. A deep depression settled over Lydia, like a cold shadow, as she mourned all she had lost. Isaac saw her transformation from a proud woman to a broken one, and knew he was done with her. She would have to fight for her own redemption, just as he had. He whispered in her ear, "I've given you a start. The rest is up to you." The dance ended, and Tommy approached her. "I can see this has been overwhelming for you. Do you want to stay the night? I don't think you should drive. I don't want to lose my mom. Or should I arrange for someone to drive you home?" Lydia accepted the ride, and Ben and Anna drove her to her new home. Before they arrived, Anna turned in her seat and said, "You're alone and without friends. You made mistakes and you'll pay for them for a long time. Tonight, we saw you finally understand what you did to Isaac. Instead of just enduring the consequences, Isaac's goal was to help you realize your wrongs. He completely destroyed Ramsday, who's in for a rough time in prison. But Isaac isn't willing to deprive his daughter of a stable mother. That's why, on his behalf, we're offering you counseling. It will help you understand why you went down the wrong path and how to deal with the aftermath. Just think about it. If you agree, tell Fabian." When Lydia got home, she entered the dark house, removed her coat, and collapsed on the sofa. In the darkness, she finally let go, sobbing as the weight of her emotions hit her. Remorse and a deep sense of loss overwhelmed her, and she knew it was all her fault. Isaac had been hurt, but had found happiness again. Now it was up to her to try to do the same.